I was 17 and a senior in high school when this happened. It was late October 2015, and I was involved in the drama club. We were rehearsing for our fall play, and rehearsals often ran late into the evening. Sometimes we'd be at school until 9 or 10 at night, especially as we got closer to opening night. Our school was an older building, built in the 50s. Long hallways with lockers, fluorescent lights that flickered, tile floors that echoed every footstep. During the day, with hundreds of students, it felt normal, but at night, empty and quiet, except for our small group in the auditorium, it felt completely different. The hallways seemed longer, the shadows seemed darker, every sound seemed louder. The drama teacher, Mrs. Chen, was great, but she was also pretty relaxed about supervision. She'd let us take breaks whenever we wanted, use the bathrooms, get water from the fountain. As long as we came back within 10 minutes, she didn't mind. The school was locked from the outside, but we could move freely inside. The janitor was somewhere in the building, cleaning classrooms. We felt safe enough. One night during a break, I went to use the bathroom. The nearest one to the auditorium was down a long hallway on the first floor. I walked alone, my footsteps echoing off the tile. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Half of them were off to save electricity, so the hallway was dimmer than usual. Just bright enough to see, but dark enough to feel uncomfortable. I used the bathroom and started walking back. As I passed the janitor's closet, I heard a sound from inside, a shuffling noise, like someone moving around. I figured it was Mr. Rodriguez, the janitor. He was a quiet guy, maybe in his 50s, who'd worked at the school for years. I'd seen him around but never really talked to him. I kept walking, but then I heard it again, not just shuffling. It sounded like whispering, like someone was in there talking to themselves. I slowed down and listened. The closet door was closed, but not all the way. There was a thin gap, maybe an inch wide. The light was off inside. I don't know why I looked. Curiosity, I guess. I stopped and leaned closer to the gap in the door. I couldn't see much, just darkness and the shapes of cleaning supplies. Then I saw movement. Someone was definitely in there, standing in the dark, not cleaning, just standing. A voice from inside said, "I know you're out there." It was Mr. Rodriguez's voice, but something about it sounded wrong, flat, like he was reading lines. I backed away from the door. He said, "You can come in if you want." I didn't respond. I just turned and walked away quickly, my heart pounding. Why was he standing in a dark closet? Why was he whispering? I got back to the auditorium and tried to focus on rehearsal. I didn't tell anyone what happened because it felt silly. He was the janitor. He was allowed to be in closets. Maybe he was organizing supplies or taking a break, but it bothered me. The way he said, "I know you're out there," felt like he'd been waiting for someone to walk by. The next rehearsal, 2 nights later, I needed to use the bathroom again during break. I really didn't want to go alone, so I asked my friend Jessica to come with me. She agreed, and we walked down the same hallway together. When we passed the janitor's closet, the door was open this time. The light was on. Inside, we could see cleaning supplies, mops, buckets. Everything looked normal. Mr. Rodriguez wasn't there. We used the bathroom and started walking back. That's when the lights in the hallway went out. All of them. Completely dark, except for the exit sign at the end of the hall glowing red. Jessica grabbed my arm. We stood there, waiting for the lights to come back on. They didn't. Jessica said we should head back to the auditorium. I agreed. We started walking, using the faint red exit sign as a guide. We'd only taken a few steps when we heard a door close behind us, loud, echoing through the dark hallway. Then footsteps. Someone was walking behind us. Slow, deliberate footsteps getting closer. We walked faster. The footsteps behind us matched our pace. We started running. The footsteps ran too. We couldn't see who it was. It was too dark. We just ran toward where we knew the auditorium was. Jessica was screaming. I was too scared to make any sound. We burst through the auditorium doors and into the light. Mrs. Chen jumped up, asking what was wrong. We told her someone chased us in the hallway. She looked concerned and went to check. She turned on her phone flashlight and stepped into the hall. The hallway lights were back on. bright fluorescent light filling the space. No one was there. Mrs. Chen asked if we were sure someone was chasing us. We said yes. We heard footsteps. She walked down the hallway, looking into classrooms. She found Mr. Rodriguez cleaning a room at the far end. She asked if he'd been in the hallway near the auditorium. He said no, he'd been in that classroom for the past 20 minutes. She asked if he'd seen anyone else. He said the building was locked, just us and him. Mrs. Chen came back and said we probably just scared ourselves. That old buildings make weird noises, that maybe someone from the drama club had played a prank. But everyone else had been in the auditorium the whole time. We'd checked. No one had left. The next day at school, I asked around about Mr. Rodriguez. Most teachers said he was quiet but harmless. Then I talked to Miss Patterson, who'd been teaching there for 30 years. She got a weird look on her face when I mentioned him. She asked why I wanted to know. I told her about the hallway incident, leaving out some details so I wouldn't sound crazy. She said that about 10 years ago, there had been an issue with Mr. Rodriguez. A student had reported that he'd followed her to her car after a late event. Nothing happened, but it scared her. The school investigated, but there wasn't enough evidence of anything inappropriate. He kept his job. Miss Patterson said she always made sure to walk students to their cars after evening events if Rodriguez was working. She didn't elaborate why. I stopped going to the bathroom alone during rehearsals. I always brought someone with me. One night, about a week later, I was walking with 2 other girls from drama club. As we passed the janitor's closet, the door was cracked open again. Dark inside. One of the girls, Amy, stopped. She said she heard something. We listened. Whispering from inside the closet. The same sound I'd heard before. Amy reached for the door to close it. I told her not to, but she pulled it open anyway. The closet was empty. Just cleaning supplies. But there was something else. On the back wall, someone had written on the concrete in permanent marker. Names. Lots of names. Girls' names. I recognized some of them. Girls who'd been in drama club over the years. My name was there too. Jessica's name. Amy's name. We ran back to the auditorium and told Mrs. Chen. She looked shaken. She called the principal immediately. The principal came to the school, looked at the closet, and called the police. They took photos of the names. They questioned Mr. Rodriguez. He denied writing them, said he didn't know how they got there. But the closet was locked every night. Only he had the key. They checked security footage from the hallways. There wasn't much coverage, but they found something. Several nights over the past few months, Rodriguez had been entering the janitor's closet and staying inside for long periods, just standing there in the dark. On nights when drama club rehearsals were happening, like he was listening, waiting, he was fired immediately. The school board launched an investigation. They found he'd been accessing student records he shouldn't have had access to. Looking up schedules, addresses, phone numbers, all girls who stayed late for activities, drama club, choir, sports practices. They never found evidence he'd done anything beyond that. No contact with students outside school, no assaults, just the names on the wall and the records access and the strange behavior. But that was enough. He was arrested for stalking and unauthorized access to student information. He took a plea deal and got probation with a restraining order from the school. I found out later that he'd worked at 2 other schools before ours. Both had quietly let him go for policy violations they wouldn't specify. We finished the play, but I never felt comfortable at school after dark again. Even with Rodriguez gone, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Couldn't forget seeing my name on that wall. Couldn't stop wondering how many times he'd stood in that dark closet, listening to us walk by, adding names to his list. What he was planning. What would have happened if Amy hadn't opened that door? I'm 26 now. I work in an office building. Sometimes I have to stay late. Whenever I walk down an empty hallway at night, I think about that janitor's closet, about standing there in the dark, listening, waiting, and I walk a little faster. Because I learned that the scariest people aren't always strangers jumping out of shadows. Sometimes, they're the ones you see every day, the ones with keys to every room, the ones who know your schedule better than you do. I was 15 and on the swim team at my high school. This was winter of 2018 inches, Michigan. Our team practiced every day after school from 3:30 to 5. But during competition season, some of us would stay later for extra training. Just the serious swimmers who wanted college scholarships. Usually 4 or 5 of us, and our coach, Mr. Brennan. The pool was in a separate building from the main school, connected by a covered walkway. It was older than the main building, built in the 80s. The pool area was pretty standard. Olympic-sized pool, bleachers on one side, locker rooms on the other, big windows at the top of the walls, but they were too high to see out of properly. The whole place smelled like chlorine and echoed every sound. Mr. Brennan was strict but fair. He pushed us hard, but he was a good coach. The extra practices would run until about 7:30, sometimes 8. By the time we finished, the main school building was empty and locked. The parking lot would be dark except for a few security lights. Our parents would pick us up at the pool entrance. One Thursday in February, we had a late practice. Just me and 2 other girls, Sophie and Maya. Mr. Brennan had us doing endurance training, swimming laps until our arms felt like lead. Around 7, he got a phone call. His wife. Something about their kid being sick. He looked stressed. He told us he needed to leave, but we could finish our sets if we wanted. He'd be gone maybe 30 minutes, just had to run home and check on things. We said it was fine. We were responsible high school students, all 15 or 16. The pool building locked from the outside, so no one could come in. We'd finish our laps, shower, and wait in the lobby for our parents. He said okay, left his office keys on his desk in case we needed anything, and took off. For a while, everything was normal. We swam our sets, the sound of our strokes echoing off the tile walls. The lights were bright overhead, reflecting off water. When we finished, we were exhausted. Sophie said she was going to shower. Maya said she'd wait and shower at home. I decided to shower too. We went into the women's locker room, leaving Maya sitting on the bleachers with her phone. The locker room was through a door at the far end of the pool. Inside, there were rows of lockers, benches, and a shower area in the back. The showers were individual stalls with curtains, about 8 of them in a row. Sophie took one at the end. I took one in the middle. We left our stuff on the benches and got in. I was shampooing my hair when the lights went out. Not just dim, completely dark. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I called out to Sophie, asking if she was okay. She said yes, but sounded scared. I said maybe a breaker flipped. Old building. Happens sometimes. We decided to finish quickly and get out. I rinsed my hair in the dark, feeling my way around. I turned off the water and reached for my towel on the hook outside the curtain. That's when I heard it. Footsteps in the locker room. Not Sophie's. Heavier. Someone walking slowly between the rows of lockers. I froze. I whispered Sophie's name. She whispered back that she heard it too. We stayed completely quiet. The footsteps continued, walking up and down the aisles, getting closer to the showers. I could hear whoever it was breathing. Heavy breaths like they'd been running or were out of shape. Then a voice. A man's voice I didn't recognize. He said, "I know you're in here." My heart stopped. Sophie made a small whimpering sound. The footsteps moved toward her shower stall. I heard her curtain get pulled back. She screamed. Full, terrified screaming. I didn't think. I grabbed my towel, wrapped it around myself, and ran out of my stall. I couldn't see anything, but I knew the layout. I ran toward where the door should be, my wet feet slapping on the tile. I heard footsteps running after me, heavy footsteps. Close. I found the door handle and pulled. It opened, and I burst into the pool area. The lights there were still on. I ran toward the bleachers, screaming for Maya. She wasn't there. Her stuff was there, but she was gone. I looked around frantically. The pool area was empty. The water was still, reflecting the lights. Then I heard pounding on the locker room door, Sophie screaming to be let out. I ran to the door, but it wouldn't open. Someone was holding it from the inside. I pulled as hard as I could. Sophie was screaming and crying on the other side. Then suddenly the door flew open, and Sophie fell out, also in just a towel, soaking wet, terrified. We ran for the exit. I was in a towel, no shoes, no phone. We just wanted out. We pushed through the main doors into the covered walkway. It was dark and freezing. February in Michigan, probably 20 degrees. We ran anyway, barefoot on the cold concrete, towels clutched around us. We made it to the main school building. The doors were locked. We pounded on them, screaming for help. No one came. The building was empty. We were alone, half naked in the freezing cold. I looked back at the pool building. Through the windows, I could see the lights were back on in the pool area. Someone was standing by the bleachers, a man in dark clothes, just standing there, looking toward where we'd gone. Sophie and I held each other, shaking from cold and fear. We had no phones, no way to call for help. The parking lot was empty, no cars. My mom wasn't supposed to pick me up for another 30 minutes. We decided to hide behind a dumpster near the parking lot and wait for any adult to arrive. We waited for what felt like forever, but was probably 15 minutes. Finally, a car pulled in. Sophie's dad, early to pick her up. We ran to his car, crying and screaming. He was shocked. He got us in the car, turned on the heat, and asked what happened. We tried to explain, but we were hysterical. He called 911. Police arrived in minutes. They searched the pool building. They found Maya hiding in Mr. Brennan's office, terrified. She said she'd heard screaming from the locker room and ran to hide. She locked herself in the office and didn't come out. The police searched everywhere. They found the locker room lights had been manually turned off at the breaker box. Someone had done it on purpose. They found one of the high windows in the pool area had been forced open from outside. It was about 15 feet up, but there was a dumpster outside that could have been used to climb up. Someone had broken in while we were swimming. They'd watched us, waited until we were in the showers, cut the lights, come into the locker room. Police checked security cameras, but the pool building only had one camera at the front entrance. It showed no one entering through the door. But whoever it was had come through the window. They never found who it was. Mr. Brennan felt terrible. He got in trouble with the school for leaving us alone. New policies were put in place. No students could be in the brass pool building without an adult present at all times. Windows were sealed shut, but the damage was done. Sophie quit the swim team. She couldn't even look at a pool anymore. Maya stayed on the team, but never stayed late. I tried to keep swimming because it was my best shot at a college scholarship, but I never stayed after 5 again, and I never showered at school again. I'd go home sweaty and chlorine-soaked every day. The worst part was never knowing who it was. Was it someone who knew our schedule? Someone who'd watched us before? A random person who happened to see us swimming and took an opportunity? Police thought it might have been the same person who'd been involved in some break-ins at other schools in the area, but they never made an arrest. I'm 22 now. I still swim, made it to college on a scholarship like I wanted, but I never swim anywhere without other people around. Never stay in a locker room alone, and I always check that windows are secured, because I learned that places you think are safe, places designed for kids, aren't always protected, and sometimes the people who know that are the ones looking for opportunities, waiting for the adults to leave, waiting for the lights to go out. I was a junior in high school, 16 years old, and it was spring semester of 2019. I was taking AP classes and studying for SATs, so I spent a lot of time in our school library. We had a really good library, modern and well-funded, with individual study rooms that students could reserve. They were small rooms with glass walls, a desk, and a door you could close for privacy while still being visible from the main library. I liked studying there after school because it was quiet and I could focus. The library stayed open until 6 on weekdays for students who needed to study or wait for rides. A librarian, Mrs. Hughes, was always there until closing. She was in her 60s, really nice, always made sure students felt safe and comfortable. Most days, I'd stay until around 5:30, then my mum would pick me up. I'd reserve one of the study rooms online, bring my books, and spend a couple hours working. The rooms were popular, so you had to book them in advance. There were 6 rooms, total, lined up along the back wall of the library. Each had a number on the door. One Thursday in April, I'd reserved room 4 for after school. I got there around 3:30. The library was pretty busy. Lots of students at tables, some on computers, normal afternoon crowd. I checked in with Mrs. Hughes, and she gave me the key to room 4. I went back, unlocked it, and set up my stuff. The study room was nice, big enough for 1 or 2 people. A desk that faced the glass wall, looking out into the library. A chair, good lighting. I could see the whole library from my seat, and anyone in the library could see me if they looked. It felt safe, visible. I studied for about an hour, working through calculus problems. The library had thinned out a bit by 4:30. Still some people around, but fewer. I took a break and checked my phone. My mom texted that she'd pick me up at 6 instead of 5:30. No problem. I had plenty of work to keep me busy. I went back to studying. Around 5, I noticed something weird. There was a guy sitting at a table directly across from my study room. He was maybe in his 20s, not a high school student. We sometimes had college students or adults come use the library, so it wasn't totally strange. But he wasn't reading or working on anything. He was just sitting there, looking at his phone, glancing up at my study room every few seconds. I tried to ignore it. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he just spaced out in that direction. But it made me uncomfortable. I shifted in my seat so I wasn't facing him directly. After about 10 minutes, he stood up and left. I felt relieved. I kept studying. By 5:30, the library was almost empty. Just me, one other student way across the room, and Mrs. Hughes at the front desk. The quiet was nice. I could really concentrate. I was deep into an essay when I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. Someone was standing outside my study room, right at the glass wall. The same guy from before. He was just standing there, looking in at me, not moving, not saying anything, just staring. I made eye contact for a second, then looked away, my heart beating faster. I didn't know what to do. He wasn't technically doing anything wrong. He was in a public library. He could stand where he wanted, but it felt wrong, threatening. I pretended to keep reading, but I was watching him in my peripheral vision. He stood there for what felt like forever, but was probably 2 minutes. Then he walked away. I immediately got up and looked out into the library. He was gone. I couldn't see him anywhere. I sat back down, but I couldn't focus anymore. I kept looking up, watching the library. 5 minutes passed. Then I saw him again. He'd moved to a different table, but one that still had a view of my study room. He was sitting there, phone out, occasionally looking at my room. That's when I decided to leave. I didn't care that my mum wasn't coming for another 20 minutes. I'd wait outside. I started packing my stuff. As I was putting books in my bag, I looked up. He was standing right outside my door now, not at the glass wall, at the actual door. His hand was on the door handle. The door wasn't locked. You could lock it from the inside if you wanted, but I hadn't. Most people didn't, because the glass walls made you visible anyway. He turned the handle and started to open the door. I stood up and said loudly, "What do you want?" He froze. The door was open about 6 inches. He looked at me and smiled, not a friendly smile. "Something else," he said, "just wanted to talk." His voice was quiet, too quiet, like he was trying not to be heard by anyone else. I said, "I'm busy." My voice was shaking. He said, "You look stressed. I could help you relax." He started to step inside the room. That's when I screamed. Loud. I screamed, "Get away from me," at the top of my lungs. The other student across the library looked up. Mrs. Hughes came running from the front desk. The guy immediately backed out of my study room and walked quickly toward the library exit. Mrs. Hughes asked what happened. I told her. She ran after the guy, but he was already out the door and gone. Mrs. Hughes came back and asked if I was okay. I was shaking. She had me sit down at the front desk with her. She called security, which at our school was just one older guy who patrolled the campus. He came to the library and got a description of the man. Mrs. Hughes checked the sign-in log. The man hadn't signed in. He just walked into the library. Security walked me to the front of the school to wait for my mom. He stayed with me until she arrived. I told my mom what happened. She was furious. She called the school principal that night. The principal said they'd review security footage and report it to police. The next day, I found out more. The school had security cameras at the entrances, but not inside the library itself. Budget reasons. They could see the man enter and leave, but they couldn't see what he did inside. The footage showed he'd been in the library for over an hour. He'd left when Mrs. Hughes came after him, gotten in a car, and driven away. They got a partial plate number. Police tried to track him down, but the partial plate didn't lead anywhere. There were too many possible matches. The case went cold. The school changed their policies. The library was no longer open without a security guard present. The study rooms had to stay unlocked at all times, and cameras were installed inside the library. But it was too late for me. I never went back to the library after school. I studied at home. If I needed to stay late for anything, I made sure I was with groups of people in the main building. The idea that someone could just walk into my school, watch me for an hour, corner me in a room, and there was nothing stopping them, terrified me. Mrs. Hughes felt terrible. She said she'd been at the front desk the whole time and hadn't noticed him watching me. She couldn't see the study rooms from her desk. She'd had no idea anything was wrong until I screamed. She retired at the end of that year. I think what happened really affected her. Other students said they'd seen the same guy hanging around after school before, in the parking lot, near the sports fields, always watching, always alone. Someone said they'd seen him at the public library in town too, just sitting, watching people. The police were notified, but they couldn't arrest someone for being in public spaces. Not until they actually did something illegal. I'm 19 now, in college. When I study in the library, I only use tables in the main areas. Never study rooms. Never anywhere enclosed. I always sit where I can see all the exits. I keep my phone in my hand, and if I see someone staring, I leave immediately. I don't wait to see what they want. I don't give them the opportunity to corner me, because I learned that schools aren't as safe as we pretend they are. That predators know teenagers have to stay late for activities and studying. That they know which schools have good libraries with quiet study rooms. That they can walk right in and no one will stop them until it's too late. And that being visible behind glass doesn't protect you. It just makes you easier to watch, easier to choose.